Hey guys, welcome back. I'm Sumit from Backbench Coder. So I'm back with a new small project. In this project we are going to master all the fundamental concepts of Redux. I wanted to make this project because in the next couple of months I'm going to publish some of the massive react-redux project mainly on MERN stack. So you can use this series of videos as a reference to master Redux. Okay, so let's talk about this app. It's a very simple note-taking app, and this app is made with React, Redux and also connected to the Firebase. So let me just explore this app. Okay, so here you can write a note like my to-do list and then add note, and this should be added in your all notes section. So this is my to-do list, and here you can toggle it between important and unimportant. So mark this as important, so add to important, and this is a loader screen and this is in important notes, and you can remove this from important notes list. So remove this, remove. So that's it. As I said, it's a very simple React app. I have not implemented any redundant functionalities like delete or edit functionalities, because those are just 2 or 3 lines code using Firebase. My main focus on this project is Redux, so the way we are going to make this app is very interesting. First we are going to make this app with pure React, and then we will understand what's the problem with pure React and how we can improve this using Redux, and then we will introduce Redux to solve those issues. And after that we will connect this app with Firebase to use Redux middlewares for asynchronous calls inside Redux. So it's a step-by-step process. I have made all these diagrams. I tried to give you a visual representation on what's the problem with pure React and how we can improve this using Redux. So just keep patience, be with me. I am assuring you that after making this project you will be crystal clear on Redux and Redux thunk. So before I start writing any code, let me just talk about the prerequisite of this project. Well, the only prerequisite is to have some basic React knowledge. Like if you know what is React, what is component, how state and side effect is used in React, and that's all. You don't need to know anything about Redux, and that's absolutely fine. So see you in the next section. So open your CMD and go to your project directory, and then type npx create react app, and then our app name. I will name this app notebook. Make sure all these letters are in small, and then enter, and it will create a brand new React app. Okay, so our app is ready. Now let's move to our project folder. So cd notebook, and then open this in your code editor. I'll be using VS Code, so code dot, this will open in our VS Code. Okay, so as you know, npx create react app comes with a lot of boilerplate, so I'll be deleting this src folder, this whole src folder, and we will rebuild this in a second. So delete, nice. And then create a folder which is src in your root directory, and then inside src let's create 2 files, which is app.js and index.js. So index.js, nice. Now let's go to your app.js and create your first component. Now in app.js create your first functional component. So remember the shortcut RAFCE, react arrow functional component with export, and tab, and it will give me all the boilerplate of a functional React component. And now we'll just type hello world, and now go to index.js and render this app component. So here first I will import React from React. So imr, this is the shortcut of import React from React, nice. And then also import React DOM from React DOM. So import React DOM from React DOM, and now render this app component. So react DOM dot render our app component. So write the component app, and we need to import this. So import app from dot slash app, and we want to render this in our root element, right? So document dot get element by id root, nice. And now if I start my app, it should show this content hello world. So let's start this app. I will be using inbuilt terminal of VS Code. So if I press Ctrl J, it will launch the inbuilt terminal of VS Code. And now if I type npm start, make sure you are in the right directory. Hey, look at this. This is hello world. It means our app is configured successfully. Now I'll be using Bootstrap for the CSS, because this small project will mainly focus on React, Redux and Firebase, right? So I'll be using Bootstrap. So go to this bootstrapcdn.com and grab the CDN, this CSS. Just click on this, it will automatically be copied, and then go to your index.html, go to your public and go to your index.html and just import this. So use link in our header, link, and in place of href just put this CDN. Nice. And also change the title, name this notebook app. Now one last thing before I end this video, although you'll be using Bootstrap for the CSS in this app, but I really hate this bootstrappy theme, that bootstrappy blue, bootstrappy green. I really hate that color and that box shadows. And as a web developer, I always prefer a good UI. Like look at this one, you can't say that this is made with Bootstrap. So basically I'll be creating another file in our source which is index.css, and if anything we need to overwrite on their Bootstrap theme, I'll be writing that CSS in this index.css file. Okay. Hey guys, welcome back. So before writing any code, let's look at the wireframe of our app. So this is our input component, which is type your dream note, where we'll be writing our note, and then this is an component which is important notes, and then the third component which is all notes, and then inside this important notes and all notes there is one fundamental component which is the note component, right? So let's look at the component tree. So this is our parent component, which is our app component, and then the childs are CreateNote component, all notes component, and important notes component, right? Inside this all notes we are mapping over this state and rendering this note component, and same for important notes, we are mapping over this note state and just rendering this important note component. So let's start by making this CreateNote component. So go to your code editor and create a folder inside this source which is components, which will hold all our components, and inside this components folder create a component which is CreateNote.js. Okay, so inside CreateNote.js create a functional component. Remember the shortcut RAFCE, React arrow functional component with export. So first of all create a bootstrap text field. So inside form, and then a div with a class name form group, and by the way I am using this emmet syntax, and then inside div there is my text area. So text area, and this is with a class name form control. So dot form control, and just press tab, it will give me the whole snippet. Nice. Just break this down. Cool. I don't need these rows, I only need 3 columns. I don't need this name and I don't need this ID too. What I need instead, a placeholder which says write your dream note. Nice. And then I also want a button which will basically submit our form. So button with a class name btn, and remember this class name is coming from Bootstrap, with a type submit. So type submit and press tab. Look at this, we got a button with a class name btn and the type is submit, and the text inside it is add note. Cool. And just import this CreateNote component in app.js. So go to app.js, remove hello world, and just import CreateNote. And now look at this, auto import extension will automatically detect your component and import it from the right path. So just enter just CreateNote component, and now I will also add some additional class name on that div. So div class name container, and then margin top 3 and padding 3. So this is coming from Bootstrap. So now we should see our component in action. If I go to our notebook app, look at this, this is our text field and this is our button. Nice. And now to write something and to get this in our state, we need to convert this input field in a controlled component, right? So if I go to our code and go to CreateNote.js, I hope you guys have the basic knowledge of React, so I'm not explaining the basics of React. So just create a state, const note set note, and then use state. The initial value is empty string, and make sure to import this. So use state look at this, this will be auto imported from React. So at the top this is auto imported using the auto import extension. Now if I go to my text area, I need to add some additional properties. So something like value, and the value is always the note, and then on change I want to trigger a function. So this is an arrow function getting that event, and then it will set the note. So remember, the only way to change our state is to use the setter function, and set note to e.target.value. Nice. And now let's add a handle submit function. So const handle submit, and the event as parameter. First of all, it will prevent the default behavior because it will automatically refresh the page, and we don't want that in React. And now prepare the data. So const a data object, and at first just show the note. Okay, and just log this out so that we can see this result data. Okay, and just call this function on submit. So form on submit, I want to call this function handle submit. Let's see. And now if I type something like, hey, this is a note, and if I press add note, look at this, we got our object as a note. Hey, this is a note. Nice. Now let's add some additional data on this note object. So if I go to my CreateNote component, and then inside this data where I am preparing this data, I'll also add an ID, and this ID will be generated randomly using math.random. So math.random, which is a JavaScript function, and this will give me a value between 0 and 1. Now to get a value between 0 and a specific range, we need to multiply this with that number. So in this case, go for a bigger value, let's say 1000. So it will give me a value between 0 and 1000, but this will be a float value. So to convert this to an integer value, I wrap this using math.floor. You can also use math.cell. Okay, nice. So this will give me a random value which will be an unique value for that ID, and I also want another property which is date. So how can I get the date? Using new date, and then I will convert this to JSON. So basically this will give me a stringified value, and then I'll slice this first 10 characters. So what exactly happening here? So to understand this, go to your console. Okay, so I'll get a new date, basically the current date, and this will give me our current date. And now to convert this into string, I'll be using toJSON. So this will give me a stringified value. Nice. And look at this, this will give me this whole date, right? But I also want only this first 10 characters. So new date dot json dot slice 0 to 10. Look at this, this will give me this current date. So I am doing exactly this, and I also want another property which is important or not. So remember, based on this property we will be filtering the important nodes. So by default this will be false. And let's try it again. Let's make another note like this is a to-do list. This is a to-do list, and click on add note. Look at this, we got an object with a bunch of data. So date, our current date, the ID is generated randomly, is important is false, and the note is the content. So this is a to-do list. And now to fix the style, I have prepared a CSS file. I will attach that file with this lecture. So let me copy this file and paste this in index.css. So in index.css, just copy and paste this, and remember to import this index.css in index.js. Okay, cool. So what I am doing here, so basically this is a normal CSS file. I am just changing the color to orange and this brown and then this violet. I am also changing the font family to sans serif, and then basically I am adding some box shadows to get a neumorphism like UI. A quite simple CSS. So let's look at our app. Hope the style is improved. Yeah, look at this. I just need a little bit of margin on this button. So if I go to btn margin top of 1 rem, I think it should fix this. Yeah, look at this. So that's our first component ready. So in the next video we'll be working on this all nodes component. So bye. Okay, so in the last video we have created this CreateNote component, right? But we are not pushing the new node inside this node state. In fact, we don't have this node state. So let's create this node state and then we will create this all nodes component. App, let's create a piece of state inside app. This will hold all our nodes. So const nodes set nodes and then use state. This will be an empty array, so remember to import this use state. Okay, and this will start by an empty array. Nice. Okay, now create this all nodes component. So go to components folder and create a new component which is all nodes.js, and again to get the boilerplate I'll be using react-redux. Okay, so it will give me a component with the name all nodes, and just leave it like this for now. So go to app.js and import this component. I'll be using an edger to just get a horizontal line, and then all nodes, remember this will be auto imported. So all nodes, look at this at the top, and now we just need to find a way to push our new node. So this is created in CreateNote. Remember, we are just logging this data, and now we need to store this data in our node state, right? So for that, let's create a function which is const CreateNote, and this function should be created inside app because that's where we are accessing this node state, right? So this is one of the disadvantages of React. We'll be talking about this later. So this CreateNote will get the data, I mean the new node, and what it will do, it will set the nodes. First of all, get all these nodes which is available, and then add the new node. So new node, that's it. And I'll pass this function CreateNote to this CreateNote component. So pass this CreateNote function as a CreateNote property, and I can destructure this here. So inside this CreateNote, destructure the CreateNote property, and remember this is a function which should be triggered in the handle submit. CreateNote and just pass the data. Okay, nice. And then from this app, this node state, I'll pass this node state in this all nodes component. So pass nodes as a property. Nice. And now I can destructure this in all nodes. So inside all nodes, I can destructure the nodes and just log this out. So log nodes. So now let's go to our app. Look at this horizontal line. This is customized with that index.css file. So go to console and let's write a note. This is my note. This is my note. It should log a array with a single note. Yeah, look at this. This is coming from all nodes.js, and this is an array with a single note. Let's create another note. This is my note 2 and add note. Look at this, we got 2 nodes. So now in the all nodes component we can map over this array and render the data. So let's go to our wireframe, and what I need, basically in all nodes component we need to render this node. So let's create another separate component which is note, right? This note. Okay, so let's create another component inside this components folder. Note, a single note, node.js, react. Nice. Okay, so go to all nodes and just map over it. First of all, add a class on this div which is margin y3, and then add an heading which is h5. This is all nodes, and then map over all our nodes. So I'll be implementing some JavaScript inside this JSX, so that's why we need to wrap this inside curly braces. So this is my nodes, and just map over it and get every node and return a new component which is note. Remember, we just created this node component, and this will be auto imported again, and note. Look at this. And now we need to pass a property which is key, which is recommended by React to render a list efficiently, and the key should be unique. So in this case, this is node.id. remember, this is the unique value generated randomly, and then the data which is our note. Okay, cool. And as I am passing this data, In the node.js I can access this. So just destructure the data. You know what, just rename this data as note, so this will be more specific. So our data, let's make this note, it will be more specific. And if I go to node.js, I can destructure this as note. Nice. And now just render a card. So this will be a bootstrap card and div with a class name card. And remember, we are also overwriting this in this index.css file. And margin bottom 3. And then with a div with a class name card header. This is coming from bootstrap. And then the header should be the node.date, right? And then a body which is div.cardBody, div with a class name cardBody. And then inside body, this is node.note. So these are the properties we have assigned during this CreateNote. So this is note, this is id, this is date, and this is important. So we can further destructure this. So inside this note we can further destructure this. So we can get the date, we can get note, and that's it for now. And now we can remove this note dot from this note dot data. It should not be data, it should be note dot date. Yeah, cool. Let's see if it works or not. Let's refresh this and let's create an app which is my to-do list. Click on add note. Look at this, I got my note, right? Let's create another list, to-do list 2. Nice. Okay, so now let's implement this toggle important feature. So before that, let's look at the wireframe first. Okay, so now we need to add a button on this note, and that will eventually toggle between add to important and remove from important, right? So let's look at the component tree. So this is the current scenario of our app. Okay, so the app is our parent component where the node state is present, right? And this node state is passed to all nodes component as a property, and then it's basically map over every nodes and render a new node component. And this CreateNote function, we pass this function to CreateNote component, and CreateNote eventually add a new node to this node state, and this will basically change the state. And if the state changes, all the child components will be re-rendered. So that's why all nodes are updated. So that's the current scenario. And now let's implement another feature which is toggle important, right? So now where should we declare this toggle important function? Obviously on the parent component, cause that's where our state lives. So I will make another function, this toggle node, and this toggle node function should be triggered on this button clicked, which is in our node component. So how can we access this toggle node function from this node component? Obviously we need to pass this as a property. So what we will do, we basically pass this toggle node to our all nodes component, and from this all nodes we need to pass this to our node component. And the same for important nodes, we need to pass this through important nodes, and from this important nodes we need to pass it to node component. We have not implemented the important nodes yet, but that's the idea. So toggle node, just copy this and pass it here so that just you can understand this visually. And from this all nodes I'll pass this to note here, also pass to this, and it will also pass this to note. And the same for important nodes, we need to pass this through important nodes, and eventually important nodes pass this to every node component. So that's what we are going to do. I wanted to show you this visually because that is one of the problem with our Redux. We are basically drilling this property, right? We are going to talk this in detail, but that is one of the problem with our Redux. So let's go to code and let's implement this toggle feature. What I will do, I will basically first create a button on this node component. So let's create a button with a button class, and the text inside this is, let's say, add, just hard coded for now. And yeah, we got a button. Now let's move to our app component, which is our parent component, and then here you need to create a function which will basically toggle the node between important and not important, right? So let's create a function. Let's name it toggle. Okay, so what should be the logic? So basically this toggle node function should be triggered from this node component, right? On this button clicked, and it can also access the ID from this property. So just destructure the ID. Okay, and on click at this button it will trigger the function and pass that ID. And now in toggle node function it will search for the nodes from this node state with that ID, and then it will change the is important property. So remember, we created a property which is important, and that function will toggle it between true and false. So that's the idea. So if I go to the function now, let's create the logic. So it will get the ID. Nice. And at the same time, guys, we need to take care of the state because we can't actually mutate the state. So what I need to do, basically we need to create a copy of the state and then perform the operation on that. So const new nodes, and that will basically copy the node state. So remember, this is an array, so I can copy this using nodes.slice. And now we need to find the index of that node which has this ID, right? So new nodes, remember this is the copied nodes, and new nodes dot find index, and get every node, get the node dot ID and check if it has the same ID, and if the ID matched, it will return the index. So let's grab the index, just index. Nice. And now just grab the node from that index. So const node is equal to new nodes index. Nice. And now create a new node, const new node with the same properties of that node. So just copy all the properties and then override that is important property, is important. So not node dot is important. Nice. And now again push that new node to that index, new nodes, new nodes index is equal to new node. And now set the state again. So set nodes with the new nodes. Nice. Okay, so what exactly I am doing? First of all, I am copying the whole state just because I can't mutate the state, and then I am finding the index of that node which I need to toggle, and then from that index I am grabbing the node and I am creating a new node with the same property of that node and just overriding this is important property, and then again I am pushing that node at the same index and then just update the state. So this toggle node function, we just need to pass it through all nodes. So toggle node is equal to toggle node. Nice. And then go to all nodes. I can destructure this. So nodes comma toggle node, and now I can just pass this to this node component. So toggle node is equal to toggle node. Nice. And finally we can access this in our node component. So just destructure this here, toggle node, and this will be triggered only when this button is clicked. So on click, an arrow function which will trigger this function to toggle node. Nice. And just pass the ID. That's it. Okay, so just to test this, just log it out. So in the app component, I will logging out the full state. I mean console.log nodes. Let's see. So if I go to my browser, create a node, let's say my node, click on add node. Okay, it is added in our all nodes, and if I click on this add, it should add to my important nodes, right? Click on this and just go to console, and at the first render it is important as false, and if I go to this second render, this is important as true. And now we can create this important nodes component and map over all the nodes and only render which has this is important property as true, right? So let's do that. Let's create another component. In my components folder, important nodes dot js. Nice. So RAFCE tab, and just leave it here. If I go to app component, just import this component here. So important nodes, it will again auto imported, and then an Azure. Okay, cool. And now we just need to pass this nodes. So nodes as nodes property, and also pass this toggle node property. Okay, cool. Let's go to important nodes and just destructure all the properties. So nodes and toggle node. Nice. Okay, so and here we need to perform some JavaScript stuff, so that's why we need to wrap this inside a brace. Okay, so what we need to do basically we need to just filter out. Okay, so what we need to do basically, we just need to filter out all these nodes which has this important is equal to true. So nodes dot filter go over every node and check if the node dot is important is equal to true, and this will basically return me an array, and then I can map over that array and get that every node and just return a new node component. So node, and just pass the property, just let me see the properties, node and toggle nodes, right? So node as node, toggle node as toggle node. Nice, and we need to pass the key, else React will give you a warning. So the key is node.id, and just import this node, it will be auto imported. Yeah, and just add some style on that div, add a class name which is important nodes, and this important nodes class is styled in my index.css. so this important nodes, that's exactly what I am giving, and then add a heading h for important nodes, and then a div dot row, so div with a class name row, and just wrap this all dynamic code inside a div. Okay, let's see. If I go to my app, hey, wow, cannot read property filter of undefined. What's the problem? Important nodes, it is getting nodes. So if I go to my app.js, oh, it should be nodes, not note. Okay, let's see now. Yeah, cool. If I go to my app, let's create a node, my node, add node. It is added in my all nodes, and if I click on add, it should add to my important nodes, right? Click on this, look at this, guys. Cool, right? And let's create another node, my node 2, add. Nice. And for the styling, we just need to make it display flex so that it gets side by side. Okay, so now if I click on add, nice, and now if I click on this add again, it should be removed from this important nodes. So nice. Okay, so one important thing now, we just need to change the text of the button dynamically. So go to node, and here remove this add and put a brace. Okay, cool. So we just need to check is important is true, so just destructure this is important. Cool, let's copy this so that there is no typo. So if is important is true, I also remove from important, and if it is false, I also add to important. Nice, and just we need to make it display flex on these all nodes. Okay, so here just put it inside a row, div dot row. Cool, and by default row gives you a display flex, and we just need to put a margin on this node. So go to this node and margin bottom 3, just make it margin at all side 2, and add some margin on this button 2, so button M2. Nice, let's see. If I create a new node, my node 1, add node. Nice, my node 2, add node. Nice, click on add to important. The text is changed to remove from important, and it is also in the important node section, right? So now if I click on remove from important, look at this. So with this we have completed the full app with pure React, and in the next video we'll be seeing what's the problem with pure React and how we can solve those issues using Redux. So that's it for now. Bye.